Welcome to this new episode of the Teachers of Europe podcast. This is a podcast to support teachers across Europe in addressing common classroom challenges and featuring educators that can inspire others to follow their footsteps. My name is Benjamin Hertz. I'm Pedagogical Manager at the European School Education Platform and your host for the episode today. In this episode, we want to talk about how teachers can develop their students' digital competencies. This is an important question we need to ask ourselves. Are we preparing our young people sufficiently for a digital world that is full of new opportunities, but also full of mis and disinformation, and a labor market that is shaped by ever-accelerating technological change? Now, if you look at some recent headlines related to young people and technology, you would really come to think that we are quite failing at this. You might have seen headlines like how smartphones are killing our kids or how phones broke children's brains. These are two headlines from some big news outlets just from the past year. I think it is without question that we as teachers need to think carefully how we can better prepare our students for a world full of technology. That's why I'm very happy that we're talking about this on the podcast today, and also that on the European School Education Platform, we actually have a whole course series exploring digital competencies. In particular, teachers' digital competence, but an important part of teachers' digital competence, it is to know how to facilitate students' digital competence. In fact, one of our guests today, Stavroula Skiada, has been supporting this course series. She's been acting as an expert teacher and a course moderator on some of our courses. So Stavroula, a warm welcome to you and thank you for joining us today.
Good morning, Ben. Thank you for inviting me to participate in this podcast.
Great to have you with us. Now, Stavroula, you are a computer science teacher from Greece with extensive experience at both primary and secondary level, I believe. Can you tell us a bit more about yourself and how you got interested in developing your students' digital competencies, maybe beyond what you would usually do in computer science lessons?
I have been teaching computer science for 22 years in public education. I started at the secondary level, and for the last 11 years, I have been teaching at the primary level. As the head of the STEM and robotics class in my school and coordinator of the eTwinning projects, I have included in my educational program the teaching of basic digital skills, programming and robotics with a good tech approach, trying to cultivate in my students from an early age a broad range of digital competencies. The digital competencies that I was invited to discuss here.
Great. Many thanks, Stavroula, for that overview of your experience. Now, I look forward to hearing your thoughts on this topic. But before we jump into the discussion, let me also introduce our second guest, Edward Lockhart Domeño. Edward is an English teacher, and like Stavroula, he has many years of experience teaching at both primary and secondary level. And also, as Stavroula, I believe you have lots of experience working as a teacher trainer with teachers from across Europe. And I was listening to a talk you gave this year at the Bet Show in London, where you called yourself a geek. Can you tell us a bit more about that and how you got interested in teaching digital competences?
Well, thank you, Ben, for the introduction. Yeah, I'm a geek. I like technology a lot. I like playing games. I like geeky things in general. Yeah. Other things that I've been doing. Well, I've been a digital coordinator when I was a teacher in primary education, and I've been part of the digital commission since I went into secondary teaching. Then I've been, as you said, training teachers all around Catalonia, and I've been collaborating in Erasmus trainings and in other trainings on online platforms from Europe. Then everything I've been learning, and I've been trying to train teachers for the last, 15, 17 years, I try to incorporate into the classroom, and I try to create hands-on experiences for my students where they can experience and learn by doing, with a big focus on media literacy to make them more aware of what's behind and the responsible and ethical use of digital competences and digital technologies.
Excellent. Many thanks, Edward. And I very much look forward to hearing more about those hands-on activities and how you approach this in your classroom. Okay, so now to start out, let us look at this concept of student digital competencies in a bit more detail. And let's understand a bit more what we are dealing with and where we as teachers should set our priorities. Now, I think it's also important to be aware for the listener that when we talk about student digital competencies, we're talking about many different competencies. So it incorporates competencies like digital problem solving, digital content creation, or information and data literacy. So it's not just one competence, this idea of digital competence. But enough for the introduction. Now over to you, Stavroula. Let's start with you. When you think about your students over the past years and how the world is currently changing, what do you see as the most important digital competence that students need to succeed in their later life?
First of all, let me tell you that I was very delighted to hear that Edward has been involved in digital technology from such a young age, and he became a geek. As the key digital competencies that students need to succeed in their later life, I see first information literacy. We are inundated every day with countless information, so the ability to find, evaluate, and use information effectively and ethically is crucial. Students should acquire the ability to assess the credibility of sources and avoid misinformation. Additionally, in today's data driven landscape, data literacy is also a valuable competence that needs to be developed. Students should be able not only to interpret, analyze, and use data effectively, but also understand data privacy, data ethics, and basic data visualization.
Great, many thanks, Stavroula. And I think in particular, this point about information literacy is really crucial. I believe I saw a statistic the other day that said only 30 or 35% of young people verify or check what they read online. And as we know, in the current climate, political climate, there's so much misinformation, disinformation out there. And it's so crucial that we prepare our students for that. Yeah, I definitely agree on your analysis there. But Edward, what's your take on this? Do you also agree with Stavroula, or where do you see the priorities?
Well, I couldn't agree more with Stavroula. I mean, she said lots of very interesting things, and I agree with all she said. In fact, one idea that came to my mind when she was talking was that we have very limited hours of ICT classes, let's call them like that. We should not forget that every teacher has the responsibility to contribute to this cross-curricular competency that is the digital competence. Yeah, I think sometimes we rely too much on the term that Prensky coined in 2001, digital natives. We think that our students, just by being born at this age and time, know how to use all the digital technologies and what's beyond there. Yeah, but I think that's a mistake. We need to help them. We need to work on media literacy from very young ages until probably university level. In my case, my main approach, as I said at the beginning, would be a more hands-on approach. Maybe I would focus especially on the competence of digital content creation, because I think that if we ask our learners to create content and we guide them through the process, we can help them with all the rest of the competences, the information selection, or the information data literacy competence, the communication and collaboration competence, the safety competence, the problem solving. I think when they are trying it out, then we have more leverage. We have ways to deal with these things much more meaningfully through the context. Like when we're learning a foreign language, we use training and we make them use English in real communication with real communication purposes. They're going to acquire it better. I think the same happens with digital competencies.
Yeah, absolutely. And such an important point you raised there at the beginning, this cross-curricular nature of digital competencies, and that it is really the responsibility of all the teachers or the entire school. And it's not just something that should happen in those 45 minutes in maybe the computer science class or IT lessons or whatever else it is. So yeah, excellent. Thanks for bringing that up, Edward. Now, we talked a bit about what we should be focusing on or what you think we should be focusing on. Let's now go into a bit of the dynamics of developing those competencies in our students. What can we as teachers do in our classroom to develop the knowledge, the skills, and the attitudes of our students? And that's a very daunting and difficult task. So let's start with some general reflections before we delve into more detail with some concrete examples. So I'd like to pick up from what you said earlier, Edward, and maybe you can share a bit. Based on the many years of experience you have, what general advice would you give to your fellow teachers who are eager to develop their students' digital competencies, but haven't given this much thought in the past and might have considered, okay, this is just about using some technology tools in the classroom?
Well, my initial training was for being a physical education teacher. My first experiences in schools were in pre-primary and primary, and I was teaching psychomotricity classes there. And one of the most wonderful approaches to teaching psychomotor skills to very young learners was the guided discovery. So you set the whole gym with various areas and different experiences that the students can choose from, and then you as a teacher, you're around guiding them, but they are the ones exploring. They are the ones doing and experimenting. And I think that I have incorporated that into my teaching in general, teaching of English, and the incorporation of digital competencies inside my classes. That's what I would recommend teachers. I would recommend them to create an environment where the students have options to choose from for digital creation, to continue with what I said before. They have to create a digital product, and they have various options, and the teacher is there to guide them in the process. Of course, in this process of guiding, the teacher is going to be reinforcing this media literacy training. This reminds me of the DQ common framework that talks about digital emotional intelligence, which is very important to work with the students. It's some of the things that we can incorporate while we're doing this guided discovery. We can help our students become more emotional intelligent in the digital area too. Some projects, European projects, come to mind. For example, there's a very interesting project called Menable, which focuses on fighting gender-based violence online, which is very important nowadays, especially in middle and high school. There's also a very interesting project that the teachers can bring into the classes and incorporate it when they see that something's happening when the learners are creating digital content, which is the project called Everywhere All the Time by the Glassroom. They can download materials there, they can use them with their students, but they can also use it with school community too, the teachers, parents and stuff. So I would recommend the teachers to get this hands-on approach, this guided discovery, and add these elements of media literacy training to make the experience much more meaningful.
Thanks for sharing those ideas and resources, Edward. And just to say to our listeners, we will provide links to all the projects and frameworks that have been mentioned by the guests today in the show notes of this episode, so you can do further research and find out more about these projects via those links. Stavroula, back to you. Do you agree with Edward, or is there anything you might add here?
Well, I totally agree with Edward, and I would like to add that what I have learned is that there is no better way to develop students' digital competencies than by participating in collaborative projects implemented in modern digital platforms like eTwinning. Such projects facilitate group work and digital communication, teach responsible online behavior and ethical use of technology, and introduce our students new digital tools and interactive elements, helping them become comfortable with different technologies so they enhance their adaptability. At the same time, the digital problem solving and content creation competencies are cultivated, just as Edward said earlier. Finally, I would like to offer one more small but valuable piece of advice. Encourage your students to create and maintain a digital portfolio to track not only their learning progress, but also the gradual strengthening of their digital competencies. And of course, acknowledge and celebrate your students' progress, no matter how small.
Excellent. So we have two, I think, key principles established there. The first one is the guided discovery aspect that Edward mentioned, and the one from Stavroula was the collaborative digital project. I think two really powerful ideas, concepts that teachers should start with when trying to address this topic of students' digital competencies. But now let's go into a bit more detail and look quite concretely what you do in your classrooms when it comes to specific competencies. And Stavroula, earlier you mentioned this information and data literacy competence as a key one that you would start out with, and students are often lacking. So can you tell us a bit more in detail about how you teach this in your classroom? Can you paint us a bit of a picture of what happens in your classroom when you work on this?
Every day in class, I challenge my students to check the validity and credibility of online sources and websites by checking the author's credentials, publication date, purpose, and the website's domain. Every year, we celebrate the Safe Internet Day by attending webinars about bias, plagiarism, and misinformation in digital content, and I use examples of biased articles or fake news stories to discuss how to detect misleading information. And to encourage participation, I apply gamification, usually quizzes, mazes, and memory cards with real and fake news so that they learn to distinguish between misleading and real information. We also participate in the Greek Safer Internet for Kids competition by creating digital content related to misinformation and fake news. Something like posters, videos, stories, presentations, songs, etc. As far as the data literacy is concerned, as the head of the environmental team of my school, I assign projects that require my students to collect data, either through surveys, experiments, or online research regarding real-world environmental problems. Then, in teams, they organize, analyze, and interpret this data using tools like Excel and Google Sheets. They create charts, graphs, and infographics through Canva and Poster My Wall, for example, to present data visually and to support their arguments or conclusions. Sometimes, to make learning process more engaging, I use interactive quizzes like Kahoot and Quizzes to test my students' ability to understand data and evaluate its sources. I would like to add another way to teach data literacy: citizen science. With citizen science projects, we and our students can collect and interpret data that will be used to help real scientists better understand Earth and Earth systems. So, I advise you to try a citizen science application and observe the enthusiasm and joy of your students as they get in touch with nature and collect data about it, something very useful and fun at the same time.
I really love this concept of citizen science, and what you said is that they feel like scientists themselves, this link to the real world context. So I know from my own experience how powerful that is. And yeah, I think that's surely one of the best ways to teach data literacy. So thanks for flagging that up. And this is a big topic in of itself. Maybe it's something we can pick up in another podcast episode in the future. But for now, let's hear from Edward. Edward, you pointed to digital content creation as something that you would start out with. Now, Stavroula has also already mentioned elements of digital content creation and what she had outlined. But can you tell us a bit more about how you approach this in your classroom? How do you develop this with your students?
Yeah, of course. Well, in fact, I think it's very much in the line that Stavroula was mentioning before, and it's in the line of cross-curricularity. As you said at the beginning, I'm an English teacher in my high school, but I think that to teach English better, we have to teach it in a way that the students realize that it's useful beyond the English classroom, and the same happens with digital competence. For this incoming year, I have created an elective subject for my third graders in the middle school. They are going to be 15 years old. The elective subject is called Ocean Explorers from the Past and for the Future. In this elective subject, they are going to become experts in groups in one of the famous ocean explorers from the past. I have designed the subject so there's going to be an equal number of female scientists and male scientists to go in line with this education beyond just the English teaching. Their task in this subject is that they're going to have to do a presentation about that Ocean Explorer. And for supporting that presentation, each of the groups is going to prepare 5 digital resources: timeline, an interactive map, a video that they're going to create through the use of AI, a Kahoot to test the audience, an infographic. So they're going to be creating these things collaboratively. Each of them, depending on the task that they're doing that day, they're going to receive different roles that are going to keep them implicated, engaged, and participating in the project. And then they're going to also prepare journals for reflection on how they used the digital tools and everything. So as you can see, this subject, the main objective is to teach them English, but I also want them to improve their knowledge about science and oceans as we live close to the sea. And I also want them to become better at 5 digital competencies that we were mentioning at the beginning through the creation of digital resources.
Great, many thanks, Edward. And I think what's really coming out for me from this is how both of you focus your approach in the classroom on innovative pedagogical approaches like project-based learning, citizen science, and then just make use of the tools that you would always make use of when you want to organize a project or a research exercise in the best possible way. And that's where the digital tools come in. And then discuss as part of that with the students about how to use those appropriately. So yeah, some very nice examples there, and also some very nice resources that both of you have mentioned. Again, we'll make sure to provide relevant links in the show notes.
If I might say something else, I agree with you. We have to use project-based learning and all these innovative methodologies, and we have to use technology, but we have to use it especially when it's going to improve the pedagogical process, the teaching and learning process. We have to incorporate when it's going to make the process better, because sometimes we're forcing digital technology into the classroom when it's not going to make that impact. And I think we are somehow getting our students tired of some of the digital tools, and we have to be careful with that. It's a reflection that just came to my mind, and I wanted to share it with you guys.
Absolutely. I think we are currently seeing actually a trend in some education systems of pushing educational technology out of schools. I know it in Sweden and Denmark, for example. And if we don't have that very specific pedagogical purpose in mind, then sometimes it's better to learn without the tool. Otherwise, it can just be a distraction. Let's talk a bit about some other digital competencies that are important for students and which we have not yet mentioned. For example, digital communication and collaboration, or digital problem solving. I mean, you have mentioned them. We've come up in the past conversation here, but let's talk a bit more about how you approach that specifically in the classroom. Stavroula, can you tell us a bit about how you address digital communication and collaboration competencies or digital problem solving?
Edward mentioned the cross-curricular approach and a very engaging project that combined English, ICT, and environment, oceans. This is what eTwinning offers. So, to foster digital communication and collaboration, I encourage my students to participate in eTwinning projects, coding competitions, and hackathons, and programming challenges. Especially while implementing collaborative assignments on the eTwinning platform, students work in teams in real time, share documents, provide constructive feedback, and review each other's work. Through the implementation of the project-based learning methodology in my classroom, digital problem-solving competence is cultivated as students are challenged to solve a real-world problem using digital tools to analyze the situation, identify the individual problems, and propose solutions. An example of an activity I could mention that involves the cultivation of both of these competencies, digital communication and problem solving, is the collaboration of my students with the Greek WWF. The students worked with WWF scientists, communicating and asking for instructions and advice online to try to find a solution to the problem of incorrect recycling in our school by the preschool students. So, they worked in teams and created a device that identifies the type of recyclable material, glass, plastic, or paper, using AI, and then a BBC microbit microcontroller alerts the students which recycling bin to throw the trash into. Activities like the one I just mentioned not only cultivate digital competencies, but also raise students' awareness of environmental issues and introduce them to the logic of using technology for good.
Wow, that's a really impressive project that you outlined there. Would love to see some pictures of that device that your students have developed. Maybe we can also put that in the show notes. Great. Edward, is there anything else that you would point to? I mean, are there any other competencies you address, and how do you do that?
Well, part of the media literacy training goes in the line of digital safety, and I always try to relate this with well-being because it's a very important issue, especially in high schools nowadays, with a lot of well-being problems that our students are going through, and the teachers too. But I would like to highlight that digital safety is something very important, and it's not only cyberbullying, which has received a lot of media attention. There's a lot about digital safety that our students should be aware, like password management and device protection, and the idea of digital identity, etc. Yeah? For working this, more than talking about a personal experience, I'm going to talk about a school approach that they're doing in a school that I know quite well. It's called Escola Rosa Oriol, and in this school approach, the kids become the experts about digital safety, and they are the ones that train the adults of that school community. The kids receive talks from the police, and they explore resources on the internet for doing research on one of the aspects of digital safety, and then they prepare videos that they share with teachers and parents to make them aware of digital safety issues that maybe they didn't know. This is an important reflection. We are training students that maybe in their family environment their family don't even know about digital safety, are not aware of these digital competences. So if we do dynamics like this, where we help the families become more media literate, give them more chances to help their children, their young teenagers, to confront this rapidly changing digital world.
Thanks, and that's such an important point, that we need to think with the families together. And it's, a lot of these problems that the young children are facing nowadays, we can't solve them all at school. We need the families on board to do that. And so this sounds like an excellent project that takes the families there into account, into that whole equation. Great. Let's move on to talking a bit more about the teachers and what support they need, because it's quite a daunting and challenging task for many teachers. As you have said, we need to do it in a cross-curricular approach, but we're quite bogged down by all the obligations we have, by the curricula of our own subject. Usually there's a lot of marking, lesson preparation to do, so we don't have a lot of time to dedicate to thinking about this and working on this. So what kind of support or resources do you think teachers need to be able to better develop their students' digital competencies? Edward, let's start with you. Maybe you can start out by saying what type of support or resources you had at the beginning of this process and that helped you the most.
Well, I think I'm a self-learner, so I learned by doing, mostly. I was never afraid of trying out things in the digital world, and that helped me a lot. So that's one of the things I would recommend the teachers, that they try, that they explore different resources without the fear of I don't know, making a mistake, because usually in the digital tools that you use, you can amend any mistake that you commit. Nowadays, the reality is very different from when I started back in the day in the 90s. There's, for starters, there's the internet, and you have a lot of resources online. Now there's much more training on digital tools, both online and usually organized by the governments. And there's specifically a project, a website that I would like to recommend teachers to explore. They can find resources quite easily there. It's called Better Internet for Kids. It's well known nowadays. There are a lot of resources, ideas, and plans that they can directly apply in their classes. There's also one section, especially related to what I was saying before about digital safety, which is the Safer Internet Day. This is a section or a sub-project inside Better Internet for Kids, where they have resources and a list of events that happen in the various European countries, and I think it's a place where they can find a lot of information to work on this safety competence inside the digital competence for helping the students.
Great, thanks. And I believe that most of the resources on the Better Internet for Kids website are also available in multiple languages. Really a great place to go look. And we'll put the link in the show notes, of course. Great, thank you, Edward. Stavroula, has it been the same for you? I mean, are you a self-learner? Is that how you sort of approach this? And maybe based on your experience of working with colleagues, what type of support or resources would you advocate for to support your colleagues in the best possible way?
As Edward mentioned, and I agree with him, we need to keep up to date with technological developments. So I found out that the best way is to attend online courses and participate in conferences on new trends in education. In this effort, I found support from the European School Education Platform Academy. ISE provides relevant courses, webinars, e-learning content, and podcasts like this one. Everything an educator needs for professional development and to improve teaching strategies. Other repositories with teaching materials that my colleagues could visit and get support from is the Scientix Resources Repository and the IntelSFI Starter Packs platform. On the Scientix portal, a teacher can find detailed and structured lesson plans, learning activities, and digital content. Video, audio, images, presentations for all subjects and for all ages. The IntelSFI Starter Pack is an expanding set of 70 hands-on activities that help educators redefine how technology can be used in education. It contains up to, if I remember well, 140 hours of content for elementary, middle, and high school students. It is segmented into STEM, language, and humanity subjects, and mapped to several global curriculum standards. Last but not least, and as I have already mentioned, participating in e-twinning projects is the best way to develop the digital competencies of our students. A teacher who wants to get involved and join the e-twinning family for the first time can be supported by the ambassadors of his or her country and can be informed about it on the eTwinning platform. And speaking of eTwinning, I would like to invite our listeners to participate in the project that will be launched this school year for primary schools and will be based on the material of the third course, Innovative Teaching and Learning Strategies, of the Unlocking the Power of Teachers' Digital Competence series of the European Academy. The project will include innovative teaching strategies, application of digital and AI tools mentioned and discussed in that course. I would be very happy if you contact me in order to participate.
Excellent. I think that's a very nice to close, Stavroula. And of course, we'll make sure we'll share relevant links. And just to further clarify, this project that Stavroula is mentioning is linked to this course series that I also mentioned at the beginning, and where Stavroula was supporting us as a course moderator and course expert. So I think we've come to an end. Many thanks, both of you, for this very enlightening conversation. I believe we covered some good ground, and which should offer our listeners a lot of inspiration and ideas, and actually a ton of resources which they can further explore, helping them to develop their students' digital competencies. If you found this conversation useful, then make sure to also join us on our upcoming course addressing the same topic we talked about today, facilitating learners' digital competencies, which is launching on the 28th of October. There you'll definitely have the chance to see or hear Stavroula again, and maybe Edward, you also have an opportunity to join us in some way at this course.
That would be fantastic.
Great. So yeah, if you want to find out more about this course, make sure you go to the Learn section of the European School Education platform to find more information. And of course, make also sure to check out all the other resources available across the European School Education platform and eTwinning. Stavroula has mentioned all the different eTwinning supporting resources already, ambassadors, etc. So there's a ton of material and resources out there that can help you to get started, and that can also help you get started then on this topic on supporting students' digital competencies. Many thanks for listening, and thanks again to our two guests, Stavroula and Edward, for sharing your insights. Keep an eye out for more podcast episodes coming out soon. Until then, goodbye.